Rob Carrick spent almost 30 years as the personal finance columnist at the Globe and Mail. There is probably no angle in that on that beat that he has not covered. In this next chapter, he has decided to launch a new podcast. This one, co-hosted with Shannon Simmons, a frequent guest on this show. It's called The FinDustry. Rob joins us now to talk about it. Hello there, Rob.
Hi, Bruce.
Why did you decide to launch a podcast focused on the industry dynamics?
My column was over the years at the Globe Mail, and what I'm working on now on Substack is all for the end user, the investor, the client, the customer. But I gained a lot of insights about how advisors worked over the years by talking to these people. Let me tell you, Rob, about my advisor. My advisor's doing this and I don't like it. I want to know, is my advisor doing a good job? Can you look in? Am I paying too much? Am I getting the right value? And I thought, well, I've learned a lot over the years and I bet I could help advisors do a better job.
You pulled no punches in your coverage of the industry over the course of time, and I'm sure attracted your fair share of haters, in particular on things like fees. Many advisors would prefer that you didn't talk so loudly and clearly about the fee dynamic. Does it feel like you've walked into the lion's den with this?
I was once screamed at by an advisor at an event for advisors because I was talking about fees and stuff like that. So yes, I have felt the wrath of the advisory community, but I think advisors have really improved their game in the last 10, 12 years vastly. Much more professionalism, much more transparency and accountability. There's still a ways to go, and maybe I can help with that. But I do feel that the advisory profession's ready to talk more about what they do. They're more open about fees. Yes, we charge fees. Yes, they weigh heavily on investor minds, but they're starting to think more in terms of what's the value of the fees I charge rather than hiding the fees.
Yeah. In the episode that I listened to, it was around fees. And one of the things you acknowledged was that perhaps you were maybe not part of the problem, but like a negative voice, having such a loud voice on fees that may have minimized the role or the service or the value that advisors provide. Talk a bit more about that.
Well, I think myself and others hammered a message that fees are bad. And when we were starting on that, let's remember that it was the mutual fund age and
Yeah.
fees were like 2.5% on average. And advisors really just sold those mutual funds. There wasn't a lot of service or financial planning. And back in those days, fees were evil. But I think we pushed on that without pivoting to the idea that you're paying for fees. What are you getting? And if you're getting a good package of services, those fees have value and are, quote, worth it. And I think that's a message I'd like to be pushing more on now. Not that fees are bad, but make sure you're getting good value for the fees. And let's keep the fees reasonable for sure. There
Yeah.
are probably many investors who are overpaying, and that's in a literal sense, and it may be in a value sense too. I'm paying a lot and I'm not getting anything. We need to help people understand the cost of advice.
What do you mean when you say service matters? Like, they're paying, let's say they're paying 1% on $1 million. That's 10 grand a year. That's a multiple of 1% on 2 million, 20 grand a year. What should people expect that would help them adjudicate or judge for themselves whether they are actually getting their money's worth?
Core concept, do you have a financial plan? Have you sat down and talked about what you want to do in your life and what the costs are going to be and what you see in terms of helping family and friends and whatever else? A lot of boomers want to help their kids financially. What age do you want to retire at? What do you want to do in retirement? How much of a legacy do you want to leave? Do you want to do it while you're living, or do you want to wait till the end? How much are you retirement saving? And take all of that and put it into a plan, and then link the plan to your investments and have frequent conversations, by which I mean once a year or more often, about, you said you want to do this, we're on track. Your investments have done this. You are cruising because you're achieving more. If there's a shortfall in your investments, maybe you need to contribute more. That's a conversation you need to have. So you're not just talking about, oh, your portfolio is up or down. It's, are you on track to meet your goals, all the many goals you said you wanted? And that's where the advice is. It's multiple interlocking conversations about portfolios and about goals and about measurable objectives that you can achieve. And it's giving you the sense that I will be okay.
People spend very little time on this, the value question for themselves. You see it, I see it. I did an event last week where people are like, "What are you telling me?" And I was talking to a
Yeah.
group of retirees. So they were probably spending 30 grand, 40 grand a year on fees. How do you engage on the question about advice only planning? That's like, whatever it is, 2,500 bucks to 10 grand for something more complex. And someone who has millions of dollars in assets with a fee based provider who's now spending 40 grand on something that if they could carve out the advice only, maybe costs 5 to 10, and figure out some cheaper way to get the investing tasks done that don't have it so closely tied to a percentage, which is going to, it's going to go through the roof over time.
When I talk about fee only planning or advice only planning, and that's where you pay a flat or an hourly rate for a financial plan, people love the idea. Like I've done speaking events, and I say in the middle of the presentation that there's this kind of planning, and I have a spreadsheet put together by a blogger with a national directory of these advice-only planners. Here's my email, and by the time I get back to the office, at least half a dozen people have emailed me. Yes, please, I want that spreadsheet. And then in the days and weeks after, I get many other people reaching out. The idea really resonates. But there is the issue of, okay, I've got the plan, and the advisor's maybe given me some ideas about an asset allocation, a mix of stocks and bonds, and maybe what percentage I should have in stocks and that sort of thing. But it's up to me to put the portfolio together. Some people can do that, some can't.
Yeah.
And so in that case, you might need to have an advisor who does the investing for you. But I really think advice-only planning works great with someone who can take care of the investment side themselves, whether it's a robo-advisor or they just go out and buy an asset allocation ETF, or they keep a really simple portfolio, and then maybe the planner can say, "Oh, you just turned 65. What's your asset allocation? Oh, I think 60/40 is a better." And you go and you make those alterations,
Right.
and you sort of manage the investments yourself. The thing with investing yourself, though, is, and I'm learning this, people are aging out of DIY investing.
Huh.
They are getting to a point where they think, I did it and I've done it well and I like doing it, but I don't feel on top of it anymore. And that's where the full service advisor who does the planning and the investing can really be invaluable.
Yeah. I think you're raising a great point in terms of age and stage. I know that I will not be as strong cognitively at 85 as I am today. It's just not possible. And I may be less interested. It will also be a much more complicated situation because when I'm 85, I am likely not earning any money except for maybe money on my investments. It feels to me like the advisor community haven't yet cracked that the big idea is providing advice in decumulation.
Yeah, I've asked about that. I said, why are there no retirement specialists? Why are there no advice firms saying we specialize in retirees? Retirees, let us give you assurances you're going to have a great retirement. And the reason is that they don't want to limit themselves. They would prefer to have a wide open, branding so that people of various ages comes. It's almost like diversifying
Yeah.
their client base. But I think that's coming. And I think retirement is all about this time of life when we are at ease and enjoying ourselves. But you can't do that if you don't feel comfortable about your money. And advisors can provide that comfort. And I think they need to zero down on that message and not be all things to all people in some cases.
FinDustry has a couple episodes online as you think about where it's headed over the course of the weeks, months, and years. What are some of the topics that you and Shannon think you'll tackle?
Well, we want to talk about what are reasonable investment returns for advisors to tell their clients to expect, given that we've seen massive double-digit returns lately. When I look at the past 5 years, I see that's about double what you should expect over the
Yeah.
long term. Are advisors telling people like you're going to be half as good as this over the next 5 years? What about lifespans? What lifespan are they factoring in terms of working with a client and doing a financial plan? And that's good information for everybody. You should expect to live to 95 in your financial plans if that's what advisors do. What are their inflation expectations? I'd like to talk about that. I'd like to talk about problem clients. We talk about problem advisors. My advisor doesn't give me any advice. They charge high fees. What about the clients who expect the world, the universe? I want double-digit returns and I want no losses. I'd like to hear some insights about that as well, from Shannon.
Advisors are they're providing a professional service. And there is a whole cottage industry on how to do that more effectively and profitably. Will you be getting into that side of the business, the marketing, the business
Absolutely.
development, the operations, all that?
Well, we're going to be getting into will AI steal all their jobs?
Right.
Right.
And
Can I
what's the
just have,
answer? What's the
uh,
answer?
I'm going to say some jobs are going to be stolen, but that's the ones who are just selling investments and the ones who are just saying, let me handle your portfolio for you. But, coaching and hand holding, that's a human thing.
Yeah. Well, it is a human thing to host a podcast, Rob, and I'm so glad to hear you and Shannon coming together to create this one. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Bruce.
Rob Carrick is the co-host of the FinDustry, a podcast with Shannon Lee Simmons.